You're listening to the PooleProof Wisdom Podcast, where we bring our authentic selves, refuse to raise grown folks, and share wisdom you can use. With your host, Charles K. Poole.
Good morning, good people, and welcome to the podcast. You know, it's the holiday season, and I'm so glad that this is also airing on what is the one-year anniversary of the debut of PooleProof Wisdom. You know, when I started this podcast, I started doing it primarily because I wanted to elevate the conversation. There's so much noise out there, so much negativity. Everybody's trying to one-up one another. And I wanted to have conversations with people about things that matter, stories that are about evolution and improvement. And I've been able to do that in the course of this year. The thing that makes me happiest is that some people are still clamoring for followers and all of that type of thing. Well, that's not the reason I do this podcast. I really do enter each one of these sessions thinking, if there is one person out there who hears what is being said here and benefits from it, then I have done my job. And that is going to remain my mantra throughout the time that I continue to do these. On this one-year anniversary, I wanted to speak with someone who has a story that I find both compelling and inspiring. And as you get to hear more and know more about this story, you'll understand why. Now, we've all been reminded, particularly over the last couple of years, that when we encounter someone, we never know what they're going through. You can't always tell by looking at them, and you certainly can't expect, even in this oversharing world in which we live, people to just tell you everything about themselves. So, when we find out what people are facing and the courage with which they are facing it, we're often surprised, shocked even. But the truth is, we shouldn't be. It is far more likely that those we know and those we don't know are fighting a battle we know nothing about. My guest today, Brooke Abbott, is a single mom, a creative, and a coffee aficionado. I don't get the coffee thing. We'll have to talk about that. But she's also a patient, a student, an activist, and an advocate. Those are attributes you wouldn't necessarily associate with her just by looking at her walking down the street. But after being diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, a form of inflammatory bowel disease, in 2008, she became these and many, many other things. Most inspiring about these, however, is her braveness. She's terrifically brave. Brooke dedicates her time to encouraging health equity, education, and disability rights for those affected by chronic conditions and disabilities. Now, this includes activism both on the legislative level and within the chronic illness and disability communities. And still, unless she is having a flare-up, you wouldn't know that about her. It's the fact that Brooke wants people to understand chronic illness. It's rarely what people think it is that this conversation is so important. So today, let's learn what she knows and elevate the conversation about chronic illness, guided by Brooke, who is known online and within the halls of Congress as the Crazy Creole Mommy, a social media brand she created to spread awareness about living with a chronic condition as a single mother of color. I also want you to know that she is also the founder of IBD Moms, a nonprofit resource for moms affected by IBD as patients or caregivers. And of course, IBD stands for irritable bowel disease. Now, I've known Brooke for a lot of years now, and I can honestly say that although I was impressed by her from the outset, I am even more so today. I also respect her. She is living proof that we are not our circumstances, a lesson first taught to me by my own mama, and one that Brooke is teaching us all as well. Now, Brooke's story has been featured in Women's Health Magazine, Prevention Magazine, WebMD, Everyday Health, US Weekly, and LA Parent. She has participated in advisory boards promoting health equity for Janssen Biotech, Health Voices, the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation, the Department of Defense, Pfizer, AbbVie, Arena Pharmaceuticals, Single Mom Planet Foundation, and WeGo Health. Brooke is a dedicated person who is focused on ensuring health equity and equality for everyone. She's also the mother to actor and model and incredibly intelligent and astute Jax Honeycutt, and they reside in Los Angeles with their puppy, Winston. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Brooke. Brooke, good morning and welcome to the podcast. I'm really excited you could join us today. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me. This is like, it feels like a full circle moment.
It's been a long time coming.
It has.
We're in each other's orbit, but I've always believed that people can build strong friendships and they don't have to see each other and talk to each other every day, but we always know what each other is up to and what we're doing. And you've been doing a lot. Yeah. So I wanted to talk to you today about that journey, because what you are doing is not just about yourself, but about helping other people. And as I've described, you've been through it. You don't look like what you've been through.
Yeah.
But tell me a little bit about your journey, where it started, and then we'll just dive into questions around how you've had that experience and why it has helped you to do what you're doing now.
Yeah. So it started in a very interesting space. I started college the week of 9/11. Crazy week, right? Started to not feel good. After it happened, I actually got the flu. First week of school, crazy terrorist situation. We're it was a lot. A few weeks after that, I continued to feel weird. I just felt not great, a little lethargic. I lost some weight, and it just kind of kept progressing. That was my freshman year. And then I transferred schools and moved up to San Francisco. And I really started to feel not great. I mean, it was very off and on. There were times when I would be, very active with kids that I would babysit. And then there were days when I just could not even function. There were days when I had multiple trips to the restroom. There were days when I would eat something, and then as soon as I ate it, I had to go to the restroom. And I just didn't know what was going on. The rapid weight loss was also very interesting, because I would gain weight and then I would lose it very, very rapidly, not doing anything. By the time I moved to San Francisco, I was very skinny. I was not doing very well in school, which was odd for me, because education is just, number one. I live in a family of women. Not to say that, we don't have men in our family, but when I really think about my family, we're like the Amazons, it's just a very women-focused family. And so education's very important in our family. And the fact that I could not stay awake in class and my grades were not great was very weird. And I just thought, okay, I can't cut it. Something's wrong. This isn't for me. Maybe, I don't know what's going on, but maybe school's not for me. So I dropped out. And it was the most devastating day of my life. I just didn't even know what to do with myself after that. And I made up a lot of excuses, it was just too expensive, and, I just need to work, and, just a bunch of excuses. But really, at the end of the day, I was not feeling well and didn't know why. So by that time, I was in my early 20s. This was going on, 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
And then finally in 2007, I was working on a television show for the BBC with Arthel Neville. And I've known Arthel for a very long time. She's a very good friend of my mom's. And this was my first real producing job. And, when you're kind of in that family business type of thing, and then you get your big break of stepping out of your parents' shadow or out of your parents' care, really, and you can step out. That was that job for me. Even though I knew Arthel, she was taking a big risk on hiring a 23-year-old to produce her show. And the first day of production, she and I went on a hike, which wasn't something that was new for me. But by the end of the hike, I started to feel not great. I was sweating. I felt like I was going to pass out. I couldn't breathe. I just felt really bad. And I ended up staying on her couch for a while, drank some Gatorade, and then I was fine. We started production. We were about 4 shows in, and we were on set one day, we were doing pickups, and I started to count down. I was also the assistant director. So I was sitting next to the camera guy, and he said that, I looked at him and I said, "Is it hot in here?" I don't remember this. What I remember is looking at Art and starting to count down. And then the next thing I know, I wake up and everybody's over me. I'm on the floor. I had passed out on my stool. It was just weird, just a weird situation. I had eaten that day. I was hydrated, didn't know what was going on. So, my mom came and picked me up, went to the ER. They gave me some fluids. They didn't, and by this time, just so you know, throughout this, I had been going to doctors like, there's something not right. Like something's going on. I had been put on a vegan diet. I had been put on this. Everybody talked about everything except for the one thing that they should have asked me. So I spent about a week on my mom's couch, not being able to get up. And I ended up passing out in her house. She had one of her clients who was a doctor come over, and she looked at me and she's like, your symptoms sound like they're in the gut. I have a GI friend who works at the hospital with me. You should go talk to him. So I went to talk to him. He asked me 3 questions. I answered them, and he goes, "Oh, yeah, you've got ulcerative colitis. We'll do a colonoscopy." And that's a textbook case. It's been 7 years. What?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Right.
So he did a colonoscopy. He confirmed the diagnosis, and I was diagnosed with inflammatory bowel disease. And my particular form was called left-sided ulcerative colitis. So it was centered in my colon. It's the sister disease to Crohn's disease, which Crohn's disease affects the entire digestive tract from, your mouth, all the way down to your anus. Like it can do a bunch of things. In different pockets. Ulcerative colitis is very centered in your colon. It can be one side, or, it could be the entire thing. Mine started off as left-sided one side. That was in 2008. By 2012, I had my colon removed. I had just gotten too sick. And by that time, it was pancolitis, so my entire colon was affected. My doctor, one of the doctors on our advisory board or our board of directors for IBD moms, she saved my life. She was one of the doctors that was just really in my case and, pulled a lot of strings to get me seen by a surgeon. And she said that they called from surgery and said, well, when we pulled it out, it came right out and it was fine, but then there were 5 places where it perforated as we laid it down. So basically I was running on borrowed time at that point.
Right.
And between, 2008 and 2012, my life had just completely changed. In that time I had become a mother, but I was living during a time when patients were not necessarily covered by health insurance. So I was paying out of pocket for a lot of this stuff. I was, rationing pills because I couldn't always pay for them. I was also, seen as someone who apparently was a drug addict. So yeah, there's that. So I wasn't given pain medication. So my inflammation markers just stayed very high because I couldn't sleep. I was in pain all the time. By the time I had my surgery, I was 98 pounds. I was losing my hair. It was just not a great time. And, when I came out of it, the surgery that you have is usually a 3-step surgery. So you can have 2 or 3. So you have your colon removed and they give you an ostomy. Then your second step is they put in what they call a J pouch. And it's basically just a piece of your small bowel that becomes the reservoir as a replacement for your colon. And then the third step is they put your ostomy back. They basically fix that up, close that up, and then you live with a J pouch. And during between my first and second surgery, I had a long talk with my mom about everything that had happened. And, we just really kind of went back on things and looked at things. And I had been writing a blog about motherhood and politics because I'm like super political and
No.
like,
You?
yeah, no, not at all. And she was like, you should put your story on there. And for my mom, who works in Hollywood,
Right.
who, when I was pregnant, we were on a show, she was like, this is not the time to tell people you're pregnant. Like, she's super private. So for her to tell me to go do that, I was like, this is something else telling me that I need to be open and honest for a reason. So I put it out there and I got a few responses and I just kept talking about it. And then I started, instead of just telling my story over and over, because it's long and it can be, I mean, it's engaging and it seems like a lot in the beginning, but if you hear it over and over again, it gets boring, right? So I was like, well, what can I do with this? Like, telling my story isn't going to help anybody. What can I do? Well, I was still a mom. I still needed, a stroller to adapt to my needs. I had done all of this stuff when I was, baby wearing and when I was, looking for products to help me get through the day. I had a whole box that, I kept so that Jax could play, but I could still lay on the floor or lay on the couch. And I was like, why don't I share these things? So I started doing that. And then I was asked to testify about health insurance and health coverage in front of Congress. And I had always been very political. And I was like, well, I know how to read legislation. Like, why don't I teach patients how to read legislation and how to advocate for themselves? And then why don't I go and advocate on the Hill? I know people out there. I can create the meetings myself. Like, let's do it. So I just started doing it and it just kept going and going. And now, Amber, my good friend Amber from About IBD, we've been doing IBD Moms. And I'm like, that started from me just going around the country teaching moms how to baby wear and going, well, these moms who are, not to say that they're normal, but they don't have disabilities. They don't have, all the medical devices that we have or need. And they have all of these resources. They have these big conventions where they get to go and like hang out and see each other and talk about things. Why don't we have that for moms with IBD? Why don't we have that for moms with diabetes? Like, we need that. So then we started IBD Moms because I didn't have enough on my plate. So I did that. And then I went back to school because why not?
Well, let me stop you for a second. I'm not surprised that you're doing all that because I'll have a reflection on that in a moment. But let's go back a little bit, Brooke.
Yeah.
You're in your 20s,
Yeah.
where everything lies ahead of you. We have our plans, our ideas, our ideals, for that matter, about what life is going to be for us. There are some themes you hit up on. Obviously, being a young woman and finding out that information, that's one thing. To be a young woman and then having to wait 7 years before someone finds out what's wrong with you. And I can relate to that. I didn't have anything that was as dastardly as IBD, but I did have a condition that took 5 years for them to find out what was wrong. So I understand where you're coming from. And then the third prong of what you've discussed is this focus on what it means to be a person who is diagnosed with a chronic illness, and then trying to get to a point where you can receive the treatment that you need and want, the financial implications, those type of things. Talk to me about those three things. The fact that when this happened, you were a young woman at the start of your life for the most part, and what that impact was. And then those other two categories that helped you so as you moved to that next point and started doing all of these different things, that's your fire in the belly, I know, driven, at least it seems to me, by those three areas. So talk to me about that.
Yeah. I'm a planner. I graduated high school, planned to go to film school. Like, I had everything mapped out, planned out. When I met you, I was working for a nonprofit, but that nonprofit was run by my mom's very good friend who is an actor, and I was working in production on the side. Like, I knew what I was going to do. I did not know, because I also have asthma. So for me, having a chronic condition, I was like, okay, you know, when it flares, I take my medicine, I move, go on, I move about my business, you know. This was a whole body situation. You know, one huge factor that I didn't know when I was diagnosed is that even though this is centered in the gut, it for sure affects everything. I didn't understand what fatigue was. I didn't, you know, I just, not that I ignored it, but I was like, oh, well, you know, clearly I'm not drinking enough, you know, vitamin C.
There was always a reason.
Always a reason, you know, and it was always me. I'm not doing this. I'm not, you know, so let me change it. Instead of saying or recognizing that this is out of your control and there are going to be days when it's like this and you'll have to adapt and everybody around you will adapt. But because I didn't adapt, everyone around me didn't and didn't know how to. And I think when I look back on that period of my life, in the beginning, like after I had my surgery, I felt ashamed and guilty. I was really embarrassed because all of a sudden I had all this knowledge about what I was dealing with. And I think about, you know, not showing up for work and being tired and oversleeping by like an hour, you know. And I thought, God, what people must think of me. I remember after my surgery, like maybe 3 days after my surgery, and I had a long talk with the ostomy nurse, and she was explaining to me what was going on in my body. And then the surgeon came in and he was telling me like what my insides look like. And I just remember like thinking, God, all this time, you know, I've been feeling this way. My life is completely upside down. In that period of between diagnosis and surgery, you know, I had started a family. I had a career at the time. I was financially stable. And then all of those things were gone by the time I had the surgery. And I guess what drives me now is I know that even though there are so many advances in IBD, in the IBD community, in the medical community, there's still this health equity gap, and it affects people in such a real way. The way that it affected me was my lack of education, my lack of access to education. And most people, when they think of health equity, they think of people who are poor and, you know, are impoverished. I was comfortable growing up. I had access, and it still wasn't accessible. Now, even as an empowered patient, I can still go to the ER and be completely dismissed. I'm still labeled as drug seeking every now and again. I'm still not listened to. I'm still kind of ignored. If I'm not talking directly to my GI who is of color, I have issues still. So that passion is like in me because I don't want another young person of color to go through that, or a young person, period. You know, I meet patients who have kids that are living with IBD who are 4. We have one mom whose child is 18 months. I can't, like, I know what this feels like. I can't even imagine. Oh my goodness. It just, it really, it tears me up. And I want people to be able to live their lives, because had I had the education, had I had the access, had I had a treatment plan, my whole life would have been, you know, completely different. Had I been able to get treatment that freshman year of college, when I went to the doctor and said, I feel like I'm still having flu symptoms, but I don't have the flu. And instead of him saying, it's your freshman year of college, it's the freshman 15, but how do I have the freshman 15 when I'm losing weight? I don't understand that, but okay.
The freshman plus or minus 15.
Right,
Yeah.
apparently.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If I had a doctor who had said, hey, you know what, you're right. Something's not right. Let's do a full panel. Like, what's your medical background? What's going on here? My life would have been completely different. But at the same time, I don't know. I feel like I needed this to be able to be right where I'm supposed to be, because, you know, I'm back in school. I've changed I'm not in film school anymore. I'm actually going for public policy, really contemplating finishing up, rounding it out with law school, which was my passion growing up. But I didn't think I was smart enough or had the right tools to be able to be a lawyer or to work in policy at all. And this, not just having the disease, but having the disease while being a mom, but while being a single mom, while, you know, working in the legislative space and in advocacy, has shown me who I really am. I really put myself in a box as a kid, because I let people put me in a box. You know, not anyone who knew me, but society, as we all do. But this pulled me out and made me fight for something. I had to fight to be a mom. I had to fight to be a whole person. I had to fight to be heard. And I had to fight to be safe. The safety of living with a chronic condition is so important.
Explain what you mean by that.
When you're not heard or you're not believed, a lot of things can happen while trying to seek treatment or help. I wasn't believed when I told the nurse that I was allergic to morphine. And I was laying in bed. My kid, I had gone to the ER when I had him with me because I really wasn't feeling well. So I literally drove myself to the ER. And when I got there, I called my mom, and she was on set. So she was like, you know, Jax will be fine. I'll get there soon. And so he was sitting in the chair, and he had his iPad. And at this time, he could read. He's been reading since he was 18 months. Yeah, he's something else. But he was on his iPad, and he had heard me tell pretty much everyone that I was allergic to morphine. He heard me tell the nurse when she walked in, when she asked me about why the band said allergy. So I told her. Jackson was watching her pull this medicine out. Now, first of all, she pulled out medicine and a syringe with the child in the room and left it. She walked out. I was kind of like in and out of sleep. And Jackson walked over to the tray, and he's reading it, and he read morphine. Took a picture of it and sent it to my mom and said, is it mommy allergic? And she had to she called the ER and was like, please, whoever is there needs to stop. Now, that is a safety issue.
And the most unfortunate case of and a child shall lead them that I probably have ever heard. He had to intercede. Crazy.
4-year-old.
Wow. So it's not easy to be cared for when no one is showing any care.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Brooke, when you looking back at a lot of this, as I was listening to you describe what you have been dealing with, and that's the reason, as I said at the outset of this is so important. Healthcare is so invaluable, and I think people take it for granted, right? You did seem at an earlier point compared to where you are now that you're at this level of realization, you probably beat yourself up way too much early on in the process of this. Because it's interesting to hear you describe some of the things that you've described, because you know how when you meet people, you kind of have that first impression. And you know me, I tell it like it is. But the fact is, as far back as when we initially met, the thing that shone about you, I think, brightest was how smart you are.
Thank you.
You don't have to thank me if it wasn't true. I'd say you were dumb as bricks. But that's what showed through. I remember at that dinner we had, we were having conversations and you were going deep in on different topics. And a friend who was with me was sitting there making some less than illustrious comment, and you just chopped it down. So to hear you say that you had these doubts about your abilities and everything, and how that bled over into how you dealt with yourself with this disease is a little bit heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But I understand.
Yeah.
Because who we are as it looks in the world is only what we present often and not what is inherently within. But I love how you brought this back home, because I believe that we humans have a tendency to do a couple of things. When it's the great news, thank you, Jesus. Oh, we're just so happy. It's a wonderful day. But when the bad shit happens, why me, Lord? When we don't ask why me when the good stuff happens. What this journey has brought you on a path toward is that you've been through all of that darkness, but look at the light that you have found, and you now know why you. That doesn't make it great.
Right.
In a world of choices, right? You're like, I kind of prefer not to have this.
I'd still love to have my colon.
Exactly. Can I have it back?
I'd be cool with that.
Right. It's not perfect.
Yeah.
But we're all perfectly imperfect humans.
Yeah.
And I love how you have taken up the mantle of taking what could have easily turned into something else. And, you know, some people may be mad that I say this. Lesser people would have still been on the floor someplace trying to scrape themselves up off it.
Because it's hard.
It's terribly hard.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. When the doctor first started talking about it, I'm so glad that my mom was in the room, because I just started staring off.
Right.
You know, there was I'll never forget it. Like, it was almost like the Charlie Brown, wah. Like, all of a sudden I was just like, okay,
out of your body.
I'm going to look out this window here.
Right.
Because I was on top of the world. And even though it was like a relief that I finally knew what was going on, it was also like, come on, dude, you know? And I don't know. I don't know if maybe a part of me just started to kind of ignore some symptoms.
This is not really wrong with me. I don't believe them.
Right. Or I'm stronger than this.
Right.
You know, but the strength comes from understanding what you're dealing with and dealing with it as it needs to be dealt with, not ignoring it, not covering it up, not, you know, just not taking care of it. That's not being strong, or putting on a facade of being strong. Strength is asking for help. Being brave is, you know, being out and saying, hey, I have this and this is what it is. Right. Because when I first met you, I had just been diagnosed. I think I met you that spring. Right. I was diagnosed that February.
Wow. It was as fresh as could be.
Yeah. And, you know, the combination of not really understanding what this chronic illness needed, the attention that it needed, because as soon as I started the medication, I was like, okay, well, now I can go back to work. And then I started going back to work, and I was like, oh, I can't keep up.
Right.
What's going on?
Right.
No, I can't stand up for 15 hours on this set. Like,
not happening today.
Not happening today. Yeah, it was, I don't know. I wish that, the one thing I do wish, I wish that I had not been so scared of losing everything, because I feel like I would have been open more to understanding what was going on. But I was so like, okay, I gotta hold on to this, like I had to just I felt like I had to keep it together. And that also comes from being around just a bunch of strong women who are independent. And, you know, my boss at that time, she's got 4 kids and she's doing this. And
it's
my
what
mom,
you're used to.
That is who I grew up around, you know, Amazons, like they were just warriors. What's interesting is when I got really sick and I had my surgery, that same person had a conversation with me, and she was like, your strength doesn't come from taking on everything.
That's right.
And acting like a pack mule. That's not what that means. You know, she's like,
there's strength in vulnerability.
Right. She's
Right.
like, you need to be transparent. You need to be open, and you need to allow people to help you. You need to allow your mom to help you. You need to allow me to help you. Like, you need to let people in. That's where the strength comes in. It's the strength in your community and
That's
the
right.
village that you create. And, you know, I didn't see that until then.
And then once you got that, is that the ignition of the spark that says, well, damn it, if I've got to deal with this, I'm going to deal with it my way?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had to own it, but also I had to empower myself because I needed my kid to feel empowered, and I needed to normalize what our family had become so that he could feel empowered and loved and strong. And also, I wanted to raise human beings who saw people before they saw their religion or their skin color or their afflictions. And in order to do that, you can't just tell your kids, don't be racist or
Right.
don't be mean or don't be cruel. You have to normalize other people's lives for them, period. And yeah, I needed to own it, but not in the way of being like, I have IBD. No, I needed to own it in a way that helped me and helped other people, because I'm not going to get anywhere without other folks. And I'm so grateful that I did become that vulnerable, because I've met so many great people that I may not have ever met before. The woman that I run IBD Moms with is literally my best friend. And we have so much in common. Our kids are around the same age. She lives in Connecticut. I live in Los Angeles. We never would have met, you know,
Right.
but we are literally the same person. We are 10 years apart, and we are the same person. And I also needed Jax to have a community outside of our core, because even though it's very diverse and it's very eclectic and creative, he needed to see people outside of that and be able to trust people outside of that.
That's right.
And know that there are other people that had his back too. So yeah,
And I think, let me ask, because I don't want to make any assumptions here. I think part of what I've seen, because, you know, as I say, I'm looking, I'm checking, you know, out what's going on, that little genius that you're raising.
Yeah.
I think that part of what your dynamic is as well is that you didn't want the fact that you were dealing with IBD to become the focus of his life.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah.
And to do that is a bit self-sacrificial, and we understand that. You're a mom, of course. But it's also, what is that 100 Black men thing? Oh, what they see, they will be.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And you're showing him that through all of this, that there is a path to take that doesn't mean that this is going to debilitate you,
Yeah.
but can actually strengthen you. And, to your point, allow you to help other people find their way.
Yeah.
And what I see with him in terms of his activities, he's political too.
Oh, almost more than me.
Oh my God. I was like, I'm looking at him, I was like, how? But he's so curious
Yeah.
and interested in the world. And because he's interested in the world, he's interested in other people. And everything that you've said is what I see foundationally as being the core of who he is becoming.
Yeah.
And as he grows to adulthood, let me tell you, there are a few people I know who have kids. You're one of them. And I look at these children, and when I look at the rest of the world and they are pissing me off,
Yeah.
I base so much hope in. I know there's one kid
Yeah.
that when he grows up, he's going to make a difference, or she's going to make a difference. And that's what I rely on. So there's a lot that you must be getting from in terms of your own inspiration, even though you're raising this young man. There's a lot of inspiration you have to get every day when you see who he's becoming
Oh, yeah.
in light of this broad experience. Yeah?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because Well, I'm also raising Jax to be a person who can be flexible and who can forgive themselves because we don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
I don't want Jax to be so stuck in a plan that he'll fall apart if it changes because that's what happened, So that's the first thing. The second thing is, Jax is so brave. I didn't have a sick mom. I didn't have a sick dad. I had an uncle who passed away. I didn't know that he was sick. So I never really lived with that. And I had my mom available to me. Now, my mom worked, she went on tour and all that kind of stuff, but I had my mom available. I had my mom there to be able to do the things that we wanted to do when she wanted to do them, and also just being unabashedly smart, and outspoken. Right. And, into what he believes. It's never really lined up with me and his dad. I mean, it lines up, but not really. Very short story. His dad now lives in Texas. And so we went to go visit, and he was living in Dallas at the time. And so the night before we were going to plan to go out and do stuff, I looked at Steven and I was like, so, he's like, I know, I already know. I was like, he's like, I know. I was like, so are you prepared to go? And he was like, are you prepared? I've been thinking about it for a week. I've been preparing myself. I was like, all right, so let's sleep on it. So the next morning we go to breakfast, and Jax looks at us and he goes, so you guys know. And Steven goes, we're going to the George Bush Library. We know. We've been preparing ourselves. We already know. Jackson's obsessed with George W. Bush.
My God, that's fascinating.
Loves him. But is a total Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton thumping Democrat. But literally can recite the Bush Doctrine to you and break down what he likes and doesn't like. And still, I mean, when we got to the library, Jackson had tears in his eyes. Like, this is who, awesome. It's like some kid running into Iron Man. That's
I think that's fantastic.
And poor Steven was just like, just hardcore liberal Democrat. He was just like, why am I? Look at my kid. Why is he over here just skipping along?
But there's such a lesson that he's separating the people from the politics.
Oh, for sure. He does it all the time.
And that's really a goal. I mean, if everyone could do that, imagine the possibilities.
And doesn't go along with everything that's around him.
Right.
I mean, he had a conversation with my cousin who worked in the Obama administration about things that he loved in the Republican agenda and had a full conversation with her.
Which makes perfect sense to me.
Which is totally fine. And she was like, I love this because what you don't want is for kids to feel like they have to repeat what you're saying and they don't even know what they're saying.
Right.
And that's what I don't want. So, I'm raising him to be, that's the only way that he'll be kind and he'll be inclusive and he'll be accepting of people is if he really has a true understanding of who people are.
Okay. I admire the little fella from afar. There's a parallel here, obviously, and I don't know how much you know about it, but, my experience is that we had a small family. Dad passed away pretty young. Mom found herself a widow, had to raise kids. From a very young age, for whatever reason, my mom never thought she was going to be here long. That's just the way it was. She started teaching me things from the time I was a little fella. Stuff that many people would say was too adult. You shouldn't know this. He doesn't need to know. He needs to be a kid. My mom never felt this. Now, my mom only lived to 55. And the thing is that when she was diagnosed with illnesses, it was all kinds of heart-related stuff. Because the last time, speaking about health equity, the last time she'd gone to a doctor was in 1966 when she gave birth to my younger sister. She did not like doctors. She did not trust doctors. The treatment was not necessarily equitable, as you've been describing. So when she finally did have to go, it was in 1984, and she had a whole lot of things wrong. But Brooke, the thing that reminds me of the resilience that you possess, and I'll say it because, for any male listeners, I like women better than men, that just in general. I think our gender misses the boat on a lot of stuff.
I'm not going to argue on that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, and I have no qualm saying it. If I'd not been raised as I'd been raised, I'd probably be an asshole, and I know that. So just saying. But the thing is by the time, so it was 1984, when she went in there, they told her that she had 6 months to a year that she was going to live based on all of the number of things that were wrong with her. And I will never forget, she said, we'll see. Just like that. It was 9 years later she passed on. But I believe that there's something within a parent, particularly within mothers. She was like, I still got kids to raise.
Yeah.
I got stuff to do.
Oh.
You can't tell me it's going to be this period of time. So by the time that she passed away, I was 29 years of age. So I was well into adulthood. But I will tell you, everything that I was taught from the time I was a kid, because I was that precocious child as well, imagine. And it came into play. I knew exactly what to do. I knew exactly how to do it. And I am so thankful for that. And I'm so thankful that that's what you're giving to Jax, because we don't need to bask in a space of eventuality.
Yeah.
We live in the now. I always tell people, ever so often throughout the course of any week, I always think about the people on 9/11 who got up that day with all of their plans in place for their lives. And it never came to fruition. For those of us who deal with health issues and everything, who are still here, I know it's hard to get there, but you come to look at what's wrong with you and understanding it in a certain light as a gift.
Yeah.
Because you learn how to operate and live in the context of it. You can do things. You can make sure people know things. Unfortunately, a lot of people squander that.
Yeah.
But you haven't done it. And your luminosity when you walked in here, I was just, let me give her a hug. There's just this energy to you that you are putting into the world. And for people who hear chronic illness, we always think about those debilitating factors. But talk to me somewhat now about reminding people about the life there is to live, despite the illness that you have.
Well, like you said, you have to be flexible. You have to live in the now, right?
Right.
I am grateful for the community. I'm grateful for the new path that it gave me. It's taught me about time management. It's given me a different appreciation for motherhood, for holidays. People are always like, Creole people have parties for any little thing. That's just what we do. But, I do go big for holidays and for birthdays. And, especially during this pandemic period where it hit home even more,
Right.
Feeling like we've got to, not that you have to do everything now,
Right.
but when we put things off and off and off and off, it just doesn't make sense. I am all about enjoying what we have, working hard, but also taking that time.
Right.
I'm a single mom. I'm in school. I've got the nonprofit I work. I've got all these things, but I do carve out time to play chess with my kid. To, have coffee with my mom, to go cook stuff with my grandma, to, go have my sister-in-law and I have a mom's night out, you do those things, even if it's just FaceTiming. Sometimes I just FaceTime with, my brothers or, it's the little things. I think that I just walked away from that surgery appreciating the little things because I know that I wasn't supposed to leave that hospital. I know that the doctors did not want to do the surgery because it was just, there was too much of a risk and it wasn't going to really work out. But I was determined to make it to Jackson's 3rd birthday because in my mind, 2.5, 2.5, he would have forgotten me.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed to make it to 3
Right.
so that he could at least remember some of the things that I had started teaching him. He would know who I was,
Right.
that he would at least remember my scent.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to get to 3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so now I make small goals for myself. You know, I made it to 12. I made it through this pandemic. And I'm going to make it to 16 because I got to teach my kid how to drive.
There you go. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. And don't feel bad about the fact that that touches your heart, touches mine. Only reason I didn't do anything because I cry a lot uglier than you do. So I'm not going to let that be seen publicly. These two guys will never get over it. But that's the thing I think is so important. Thanks for sharing that, because what I want people to understand, and this circles back to where you were talking about all the things you're doing right now at the beginning of this is why you do them. You are not succumbing to the fact that you have a chronic disease. You are living your life. You're living it boldly. You are living it excitedly. And you are packing in a lot of stuff. I think you need to give yourself now, as you look back even on your history, some credit for the resilience, because maybe it's that stock from which you come, those strong women. Maybe it's just that you have tapped into your faith. And I don't believe in religion. I believe in faith. All of it has come to fore in terms of you finding your place. And much like, as I said, with my own mom, who was just like, she was like, well, that's what you say, but this is what I got planned. And these milestones you've just outlined, I'm just like, you're going to see that and more, because I think that so much has to do with what goes on in here, of course, but it has to do with what goes on in here, in the heart and in the spirit. And you are not done. And you ain't ready to be done anytime soon. And I think that, as I want to kind of touch up on IBD moms, is that the imparted message you want to share with everyone through this organization? And how is that being done in ways that are tangible that other people can relate to?
We just want moms to feel normal, because there were times when Amber and I both felt abnormal, left out of some of the IBD education. You know, it didn't touch on women's health. It didn't touch on living with a toddler while trying to change your ostomy bag.
Yeah.
You know, it didn't touch on all of those things. I want moms to not just feel comfortable in the education of their disease or in the education of the disease that afflicts their children. I want them to feel empowered in their motherhood. And I want their children to feel empowered. And I want their spouses to feel empowered. And I want them to know that, you know, even though there are some changes that you have to make, some little modifications, your motherhood journey is just as beautiful and just as normal as any other mother. You know, I remember this mom came to me in New York. I was teaching a baby wearing class, and she had an insulin pump, and she was walking around. She was going to other vendors, and she just stopped by with her friend who was trying on a carrier. And I was like, would you like to try one on? And she goes, oh, no, I can't. I have an insulin pump. And I was like, you absolutely can. And she was like, well, everyone said that I can't, because I was like, no, let me show you how to wear it. You know, and her whole face lit up. Like, that just changed how she would be able to move around the city. Because no, you can't go everywhere with a stroller. No, you can't carry your baby everywhere.
That is right.
And what she represented to me at that time was the power of community, because randomly she came to this thing she didn't even want to go to. She walked up to our booth that she didn't want to go to because she felt that she wouldn't benefit from it, but she did anyway, trying to support her friend. And then her whole, you know, life with her toddler changed, or her infant.
And I'm trying to talk here, goodness. It's erasing the stigma, because interestingly, there's so many people who stigmatize people who have health issues.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me. In a world where people should be trying to be compassionate, we want to, oh, look at that, look. And the simple goal of normalizing that you can get out there and live your life, I think is overlooked by so many people because they don't understand what it means to go through it. And when we're talking about IBD moms, and I'm so glad that you're mentioning, for the male fragile ego spouses or for the partners of anyone, who is going through this, who is a mom, that it's that whole circle trying to make it comfortable for everybody, because once the person who is going through it understands what they're dealing with, it helps them to integrate it into their lives.
Yeah.
And helps them reach the people that they love.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest impact of these types of activities. Your friend that you mentioned, who I know, and something like that, and autism. We're not going to go into all that.
Yeah.
But that's the same thing I find there. That line that he uses, I have, but it doesn't have me. That's what you're doing. You are dealing with it. And a lot of people are dealing with things, but very few people are able to take it and bridge it beyond themselves. So tell me, because I believe in support, for people who want to help the mission of IBD moms, how can they do it, and how can they do it quickly? It's Christmas. Let's go ahead and support something worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can visit us on ibdmoms.org. We do a bunch of different things. We loan out carriers. We've got a summit coming up in November, which is going to be amazing. We help moms during natural disasters. We do programs. So you can absolutely donate anything. If you've got strollers, if you've got baby, monitors, things like that. Or if you'd like to send in cash. Cash is always great. Gift cards. We do send out gift cards to moms who are in hospitals. And soon we will have a card drive where you can purchase greeting cards and send them to moms who are in hospitals, because those hospital stays can last from anywhere from 3 days to 3 months.
And so as we get ready to wrap up here, I want to, first of all, thank you. First of all, you're the first person I've actually sat across with in this studio, because usually I do these through teleconference. Is that what it's called? Video conference.
Yeah.
God, am I old. But this is the first time, so this is a pleasant surprise. Yeah. But I would also like to ask you, for those people who are listening, if you want to leave them with something that they need to know, whether it's IBD, any chronic illness, about life and the lessons that living with a chronic illness means, and helping those who don't live with it understand something that they need to know, what would that be?
I think it's important to know that you'll never really understand what that person's going through, and that's okay. That does not mean that you cannot participate in helping them, being kind, taking a moment to not try and understand how it feels, but just know that participating or having them participate in your life normalizes and starts to break down stigma. We don't have to do ginormous acts of kindness to include people. It's just, every day, a text here, a text there, an invite here, an invite there. Not saying critical things on social media about people that you don't know, or to make fun of things that you don't really understand.
That's fantastic. And I want to encourage people to hear what Brooke has said. It really is about showing compassion consistently in both active and passive ways sometimes, because everybody, let's go ahead and take an Oprah Winfrey quote, everybody wants to know that they matter, that they've been seen, and that they're heard. And when people are going through something that involves such physical toll on their bodies, it affects what's going on in your head, and it affects what goes on in your heart. And sometimes a little outreach can put a spark in that person's day to say, you know what, you're going to get through today. And one day at a time really does make a difference in this case.
Yeah.
Brooke, thank you so much. You are still as magnificent as the first time I met you. And I'm so proud of you because of what you're doing. And for those, again, who want to support ibdmoms.com.
.org.
.org. You hear that? .org. My mistakes. And go out and support them, because there are lots of needs out there. And when you're helping IBD moms, you're helping people to make a difference in real lives. Yep. So thanks again for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the PooleProof Wisdom Podcast. We always enjoy the company. Be sure to listen, like, subscribe, and share using Google and Apple Podcasts, Audible, Spotify, Anchor, Overcast, YouTube, or via RSS, so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this episode, we'd appreciate it very much if you simply tell a friend about the podcast too. Spread the word. Until next time, keep on living.